The universe, in its infinite wisdom, tends towards patterns. Consensus. Across the spiral arms, 1,000 species crawled from their primordial soups, looked up at the stars, and began their climb. And in that climb, a predictable staircase of discovery emerged. Fire the wheel, the steam engine, the transistor, the fusion torch, and then the great filter of FTL, the teleport drive. The Galactic consensus called it the first law of ascendant physics: thou shalt master the quantum fold before thou harness the relativistic spear. Teleportation, short range, then planetary, then stellar, was the cornerstone. It was elegant. It bent space, respected cosmic speed limits, it was civilized. To punch a hole through the fabric of reality and step through was the mark of a mature mind. Only after achieving this, centuries or millennia later, would a species toy with directed energy, with magnetic propulsion, with the brute force mechanics of hurling matter at a fraction of light speed. Those were tools, yes, but crude ones. The weapons of a teleport-capable civilization were clean: disintegration fields, spatial shear grenades, molecular binders. Why shoot a projectile when you could teleport a bomb directly into your enemy's heart? Or simply teleport their heart into a jar? This was the world humanity stumbled into, gasping and soot-streaked, in the year 2247. Their first FTL ship, the Odyssey, was a lumbering brute force monstrosity powered by an experimental Alcubierre drive. It didn't teleport. It pushed. It warped space in a way the consensus found vulgar and terrifyingly inefficient. When the Odyssey limped into the trading hub of Zendri Prime, it was met not with awe, but with profound pity. The galactic species looked upon these hairless, stubborn apes and saw a tragic anomaly. They had, against all sane evolutionary and scientific logic, skipped a step. They had achieved interstellar travel without first mastering teleportation. It was like building a cathedral without inventing the arch. The Volukri, avians with feathers of iridescent copper and a culture built on precise mathematical harmony, were our designated patrons. Their ambassador, Trick, spoke with the soft, patient tone one uses with a child holding a live wire. Your drive is impressive in its audacity, humans. But it is a dead end. The energy cost. The spatial recoil. Come, we will teach you the fundamentals of quantum folding. You must walk before you can run. Earth's unified government, desperate for a place at the table, agreed. For 50 years, humanity became the galaxy's diligent, backward student. We built teleport pads. We studied quantum physics that made our finest minds weep. We made halting progress, but it was like forcing our square-peg brains into a round hole nature never intended. Our teleporters were unstable, short-ranged, and psychologically traumatic. Humans reported nausea, existential dread, a sensation they called soul lag. Meanwhile, our old primitive tech, our railguns, our coil guns, our kinetics, sat in museums, relics of a violent adolescence we were told to outgrow. The relationship was one of gentle, condescending stewardship. Humanity provided raw materials, biological curiosities, and a bafflingly robust physiology. We became the galaxy's laborers, its shock-absorbent infantry, its curious pet. We were useful, but not advanced. Our ships, fitted with clunky, licensed teleport drives, were slow and vulnerable. Our colonies were hand-me-downs. The turning point, as it often is, came from the periphery. The Riven. The Riven were a silicoid species, crystalline and cruel, who had mastered teleportation to a degree that bordered on artistry. Their warfare was a silent, terrifying ballet. Ships would appear, not with a thunderclap, but with a soundless pop. They would teleport boarding parties directly into the command decks of their enemies. They would teleport away sections of hull, or the air from your lungs. They were the ultimate expression of consensus warfare, clean, precise, and utterly merciless. They respected no treaties, no borders. They sought not territory, but data, the unique quantum signatures of living worlds, which they harvested by reducing planets to inert gray dust. When the Riven fleets appeared at the fringe world of Kaelvar, a Volukri protectorate, the consensus responded with elegant force. A grand armada of Volukri, Tel-Aran, and Gox vessels, each a masterpiece of teleport-based strategy, engaged. It was a spectacle of lights, of silent flashes, of spatial distortions. And it was a catastrophic defeat. The Riven were simply better. Their teleport harmonics were a fraction faster, their targeting algorithms sharper. They anticipated every teleport ambush, every fold-in assault. They turned the consensus's greatest strength against them, creating teleport feedback loops that vaporized whole squadrons. The consensus fleet was shattered, not with noise and fire, but with eerie disassembling silence. Kael'var was harvested in a week. Panic, cold and quiet, spread through the core worlds. The consensus had met its superior. Their entire martial paradigm was obsolete. In a desperate summit, the Valkyrie High Perch made a declaration. All client species, all protectorates, would contribute to a new unified fleet based on the most advanced teleport weaponry. Humanity was ordered to contribute not ships, but raw materials and biological pilots for single-use teleport bomber drones. We were to be components. Ambassador Trick delivered the news to the human delegation on Zendri Prime. "It is a grim necessity," he chirruped, his feathers flat with sorrow. "Your species, durability and pain tolerance make you ideal for the piloting role. It is a great honor to contribute to the salvation of civilization in this way." Captain Elias Vance, former engineer of the Odyssey and now a liaison, felt the old familiar heat rise in his chest. He looked at the schematics of the drone, a teleport engine strapped to a cockpit and a warhead.
A suicide sled.
"You want us to teleport into the heart of Riven ships and detonate. It is the only logical application of your current teleport aptitude," Trick said. "A high probability, one-way fold. It is efficient." "It's murder," Vance said, his voice low. "It is war," Trick corrected, his patience thinning. "A concept, I note, your species has an extensive and crude history with. Perhaps you can finally put it to a noble use." That was the moment. The patronizing tone, the reduction of human lives to a logical application, the dismissal of our history as crude. Vance requested a return to Sol System for personnel mobilization. The consensus, busy with their elegant doom, barely acknowledged his departure. What happened in the Sol System over the next 6 standard months was not a discovery, but a remembrance. A defiant, almost blasphemous turning back. While the consensus labored over more complex teleport harmonics, humanity dug up old blueprints. Not in museums, but in sealed military archives labeled obsolete. They fired forges on Mars that hadn't glowed in a century. They retooled shipyards around Jupiter to build not elegant fold ships, but brutal, angular frames. The project had no consensus-approved name. The engineers called it the Golem. The soldiers called it the Fist. Captain Vance stood in the cavernous drydock of the Cradle of Prometheus, looking at the first completed vessel of the new human defense fleet. It was ugly. It had no smooth lines, no graceful teleport arrays. It was all hard angles, radiating heat sinks, and a nose that was essentially a monstrous multi-stage magnetic coil. Its power core, a stolen and heavily modified teleport drive regulator, didn't power a fold engine. It was cannibalized to feed a bank of capacitors the size of city blocks. "They told us teleportation was the pinnacle," Vance said to the assembly of engineers, pilots, and old war veterans. "They told us throwing things was primitive. But they forgot something." He patted the cold, tungsten alloy hull. "A primitive thrown rock still kills you if it hits you hard enough. And we're not throwing rocks." The science was terrifyingly simple. While the Riven and the consensus operated in the realm of quantum physics and spatial manipulation, human kinetics operated on Newtonian physics. Sir Isaac Newton, as an engineer quipped, was the deadliest son of a gun in space. The railgun, the centerpiece of the new ships, didn't care about your teleport harmonics. It accelerated a 20-foot-long, solid tungsten rod to 0.1 c. At that velocity, matter ceased to be a mere object. It became a relativistic event. The Riven had no shields for such an attack. Why would they? Shields were designed to diffuse energy, to disrupt quantum states. No one shot solid stuff at those speeds. It was considered barbaric, wasteful, and impossible to achieve with any accuracy over interstellar distances. But humanity hadn't solved the accuracy problem with better targeting computers. They'd solved it by accepting a terrible, beautiful truth. "We don't need to be accurate," lead engineer Chen explained, her eyes gleaming. "At these velocities, within a cubic 100,000 kilometers, everything is a target. We're not sniping. We're sowing a field of absolute ruin." The fleet was small. 3 battleships, 7 cruisers, a cloud of drone fighters that were essentially flying railgun platforms. They mounted no teleporters. Their only FTL was their old, unreliable Alcubierre drives, now souped up with stolen teleport drive parts to make them less terrible. They were slow, they were loud, and they broadcast their presence like a thunderclap in a library. When the distress call came from the second harvesting, a Gox agricultural world named Pelmara, the consensus fleet was still licking its wounds. Humanity didn't ask for permission. The Golem fleet spooled its antique drives and lurched into the void. The Battle of Pelmara was not a ballet. It was a bar fight in a cathedral. The Riven fleet, a constellation of silent, crystalline horrors, hung over the green world. Their sensors detected the human arrival, a gross, violent distortion of space from the crude Alcubierre emergence. They registered it as noise, as an irrelevant tremor. Perhaps a consensus suicide run. They adjusted their teleport shields and prepared to swat the irritation. The human vessels formed a line, broadside to the Riven formation.
No elegant flanking maneuvers.
No attempts to fold space. Just a line. Captain Vance, aboard the flagship UNS Dreadnought, gave the order. All vessels, lock primary targets. Fire plan. Thorson's hammer. For a moment, there was only the deep building hum of capacitors charging. A sound the galaxy hadn't heard in war for 10,000 years. Then, space itself tore. The railguns fired. Not with a flash, but with a sustained blinding line of plasma as the launched projectiles instantly vaporized the atmosphere around the barrels. The sound, transmitted through hulls, was a god's own thunderclap. The tungsten rods, invisible to the naked eye, crossed the distance between the fleets in less than a second. The Riven command ship didn't explode. It unfolded. The relativistic projectile didn't impact. It transmitted its kinetic energy through the entire structure faster than the material could react. One moment it was a perfectly geometric crystal. The next, it was an expanding cloud of superheated silica dust and shattered logic. The shockwave alone crippled two nearby vessels. Silence returned, deeper now. The Riven fleet was frozen, their superior teleport systems trying to process an attack vector that didn't exist in their database. An attack that traveled in a straight line at sublight, but with such unimaginable force it was unstoppable. Then, chaos. The Riven reacted as they always had. They teleported boarding parties onto the Dreadnought. They materialized in the corridors, their crystalline forms shimmering. And they met humanity's second surprise, Marines in powered armor, armed not with energy weapons, but with ballistic rifles firing high-explosive, armor-piercing slugs. Teleporting beings rely on surprise, on appearing within an enemy's defenses. They found not panic, but a hardened, sealed fortress. Bulkheads slammed shut, trapping them. Shotguns roared in the confined spaces. The Riven, who fought with molecular blades and teleport displacers, were literally smashed to pieces by brute force and deafening percussion. On the bridge, a Riven commander materialized, its form glitching from the ship's primitive electronic warfare, a crude white noise generator that destabilized precise teleport coordinates. Vance didn't reach for a sidearm. He picked up a heavy wrench from an engineering station. "You're in my chair," he said. The fight was short, brutal, and physical. The Riven learned that human bones, reinforced by a gravity world evolution, could hit very, very hard. In space, the battle became a grotesque mismatch. The Riven tried to teleport bombs inside the human ships, but the vessels were riddled with electromagnetic dead zones and labyrinthine, compartmentalized layouts from pre-teleport design principles. Most bombs ended up in empty cargo holds or solid armor plating. The human ships, meanwhile, fired again and again. Each thunderous report spelled the end of a Riven vessel. It was not a fight of finesse, but of overwhelming, applied force. A surviving Valkyrie observer ship, hidden behind Pelmara's moon, recorded everything. They saw the elegant, silent Riven fleet shattered by audible, visible, terrifyingly simple lines of kinetic death. They saw the human ships, battered but unbowed, their hulls scorched and dented, but their angular form steadfast. The Riven, for the first time in their history, initiated a teleport retreat. They didn't just leave. They fled. The aftermath on Zendri Prime was one of stunned silence. The consensus leaders watched the sensor logs, their understanding of physics and warfare crumbling. Ambassador Trick found Captain Vance in the same reception hall where he had once been offered suicide drones. You use teleport drive regulators to power catapults, Trick finally managed, his voice devoid of its former condescension. You skipped the pinnacle to weaponize the primitive. It is illogical. It's human, Vance replied, his knuckles still scarred. You saw a staircase, Trick. One step after another. We see a cliff face. And if we can't climb it, we'll just build a damn ladder, or blow a hole in it, or throw a rope made of math and stubbornness until something sticks. You sought elegance. We sought a solution. Even if it was loud and ugly, and scared the hell out of us to make it. The video of the Battle of Pelmara, dubbed the Thunder of Soul, spread through the galactic networks. It changed everything. The patronizing pity vanished, replaced by a wary, deep respect tinged with fear. The consensus didn't adopt railguns overnight. Their entire civilization was built on different principles. But they began to study kinetics. They began to appreciate the raw, unfiltered power of a simple object moving at an impossible speed. Humanity was offered a seat on the Consensus High Council, not as a client, but as an equal. As the species that defended the galaxy, not with the galaxy's chosen tools, but with our own. We became the shield, the blunt instrument, the ones who reminded the universe that progress isn't always a straight line. Sometimes, it's a leap. Sometimes, it's a step back to pick up a tool everyone else forgot. Sometimes, it's a railgun slug screaming across the void, carrying a message written in pure kinetic force. We are here. And for the first time, the galaxy understood what it truly meant to be human. It is not just the intelligence to see the path, but the will to carve a new one when the old road ends. It is the courage to be crude when elegance fails. To be loud when the universe expects silence. To pick up a rock when all others have forgotten how to throw, and with that rock, change the fate of stars. We did not follow the staircase. We built a railgun. And with it, we punched a hole in destiny. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.